away and out away is Homer Bailey. Ground ball to third. Frazier gloves. Throw to first, and Homer Bailey, for the second time in his major league career, has tossed a no-hitter. Oh, are you kidding me? Holy Moses, the second player in major league history to hit 7 home runs in the first 10 games. In the air, and the Reds win it. What a dream beginning to the career of Jay Bruce.
Well, it wouldn't be an intro without the dream beginning of the career of Jay Bruce, and it wouldn't be the offseason without Nick Kirby. You know things are heating up when he's trying to break the world record of podcasts in a week on the Cincinnati Reds, and I think we're getting closer by the day on breaking that record. I'm finally here, though. I am finally here. I've sat a few of these out. I try to be a good parent in the offseason, you know, take your kids to practice, try to be there. Herd cats is what they call coaching at the 7-year-old level, if those are wondering for basketball. But nonetheless, Solly joins us. Many may know him maybe from the No Laying Up podcast, but he's tired of golf. He didn't say that. I'm saying that for him.
I said it.
So he's gonna talk a little Reds baseball with us. You have, as always, Nick Kirby. Gentlemen, the winter meetings, I don't know if you can say they're heating up. Mr. Meter down there at Reds Fest told us it was basically just a bunch of glad handing going on down there anyways. And now that the invention of technology called cell phones, they can just text each other. They don't have to actually get in the same room anymore and try to iron out this stuff. But it's starting to move. There was a well, I don't know if it's been official. You guys may know. I've been off the beaten path of my cell phone for a few hours, but it looked like the Yankees were going to land Soto, and it appears that things are starting to somewhat move. The Dylan Cease rumors are in full demand, it seems. And then obviously you have Glass now. His name swirls around from time to time. But gentlemen, first, before we get into the plethora that is, what can the Reds do this offseason? Who should we go after? What options do we have? I guess I'll just ask you how you're doing, whether I care, the chat cares, who cares. I'll ask you anyways. How you guys doing?
God, man, I'm doing great. But I can't recall being more excited for a Reds offseason in my career as a life as a Reds fan. Really, it's we'll get into kind of some free agent guys that I think I'd be happy if the Reds found a way to add to the team, right? And usually this time of year we are dreading whatever name is about to come across the waiver wire as the guy that the Reds just signed, and it's usually kind of piecing something together. And there's usually a really strict budget that, you get like one shot, maybe at one free agent per year, and they never seem to get the right guy in that slot. But this year's so totally different that I'm not stressed about the money. That's also not my money, but there's just so much opportunity to take what's already a really, really good team and make it, I think, really, really, really good. And you could do it in so many different ways, and we'll get into a bunch of those. And I'm following it every single day. I listen to you guys every episode you do, and I'm excited to chat with you guys about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Solly. I appreciate the kind words. Nick, I just seen you not that long ago. You were in full great spirits as always. I would hope that that's still the case. I also just realized that my thing says the club's closers rock. That just must autosave. I don't know. That must have been an autosave from way back when the Cubs were just blowing games left and right. But that made me chuckle. Nick, how you doing, man? You doing all right?
I'm doing well. That must have been that. Was that the first weekend in September? The back-to-back ninth inning games.
Seems like a Nick Martini thing, if I can remember right.
I definitely think it was a Nick Martini thing. That might have been the famous quote of the Pfizer Martini quote. That might have been where that resurrected from. But Nick, I don't know if there's somewhere specific that you want to start, but ultimately, obviously, we're in a position now where, I don't know. We took a lot of guesses, Nick, on when exactly is the shoe going to drop? When are we going to start pushing the envelope per se on making moves? You've said it. I've said it. It's a long off season. Patience is a virtue at times. Many of us maybe failed to have that at time. But where do you want to start this rodeo?
Well, I mean, the Reds have probably spent more than at least half the teams in baseball, like in free agency, right? I mean, there's just not a whole lot going on yet. I wasn't sure when Reds general manager Brad Meter was making those comments to us if that was just posturing or not. I do wonder though, the thought kind of came to my mind. I wonder if like the executives across baseball are a little disappointed that there's not more action going on this week where they put so much stock into this, where they're having MLB Network live in Nashville almost 24/7. I feel like they probably want a little more to happen. And I don't know. I think back to, remember the ugly season with the lockout. Right before it went in lockout, there was like this clock of all these guys that signed like Corey Seager right before, and it almost feels like if MLB could make some sort of clock to kind of make this, I feel like it would make the offseason a lot more fun for a fan to follow at least.
Yeah, I don't know what they could do. I mean, they could obviously, I guess the MLB, if they put in like a pool of money or something goofy like that, I mean, then you'd get people that were they'd be upset about that. No matter what the league does, there'll be somebody that's upset. Maybe they can find a way to where you can incentivize some kind of trade or some kind of signing that if you were to sign somebody in this time frame, then maybe you get some kind of complimentary pick late in the draft that maybe probably never ends up mattering at all. But who knows? Maybe that's the incentive that these GMs need to try to move the needle a little bit during this week. Listen, I've said it all along. If there's one league, one professional sport in the entire world that does a piss poor job of trying to market their sport, Major League Baseball is going to be near the top of the list. Now, whether or not that matters, I don't know. I mean, but like I've said a million times, one thing they could do, Nick and Sully, that would give you a little bit of life is release the schedule during this time. Do we need to find out the schedule in the middle of a pennant race? I mean, that's my point. Like, it doesn't. I mean, I guess you could say, oh, what about ticket sales? What about season tickets? What about the I don't. You could even run like a holiday sale right now if you're the Reds and they just announced the schedule. But I mean, I'm not, like I said, I don't know anything about marketing. I know nothing about business. It would just seem to me like those things might make sense. But anyways, I digress. I'm not going to rant here before we get into too far into the show.
I can challenge you on which sport does their marketing worse, because the sport I cover is currently going through. I don't even know what words I'm allowed to use on this show about what that's going through. So it's interesting to hear their perspective about a different sport. But I thought I was getting a release from that tonight.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to worry about that. Luckily, Nick's going to save the day here. Nick, listen, there is a I know Solly didn't want to use the term, but there is a list of folks, or players, I should say, that the Reds have an opportunity to get. There is a certain list that we assume, and I guess I don't like saying that because it makes us feel like we're lesser than the other teams. But let's face it, I'm not going to be here and be naive. There is a certain list of people we aren't going to have an opportunity to go get, and those names are like Ohtani, and I would even say probably even a Bellinger. But you get my point here. As we progress through this, are you starting to feel like, and I know Solly certainly does, do you feel like there's a list or a shorter list of names that you're starting to get like, hey, these are guys that would get me excited and these are realistic names?
If you're going to me, yeah, I think everyone I've put on the list that I think we'll look at eventually is somewhat realistic. Obviously, there's some high-end names in there, and obviously you can't sign all of them, but I think the Reds payroll is sitting somewhere around $67 million right now, if I have that right, something around that with projected arbitration raises and all that. So again, if you adjust like for inflation payrolls that the Reds have had over the last, like going back to like 2015, like at one point they got up to in 2023 dollars, $145 million payrolls, right? So in theory of amounts they've spent before pre-pandemic, which is probably a different spending world than what they're interested in right now. In theory, based on that, there's another almost $80 million to go before they would reach a previous high in payroll. So I don't think they'll get there, but that's all to show like you almost can't overspend this year and even probably into next year. Like they can't spend too much money. There's not enough roster spots really to fill in too much money. So I would like to see them get a big money guy, a big name guy. We can talk about the Glasnow thing, but I just don't know how many 1 to 2 year, 25-ish per year guys are still kind of sitting out there, right? A lot of the guys that are in that 25 million AAV range are looking at 3 to 4 year deals, and that's probably going to give a bit of pause. Nick, I know you've been all over this one of like, do whatever you want with these next 2 years payroll. I mean, and they have so far. Like, is Emilio Pagan worth $8 million a year? Like, probably not, but hey, he makes the Reds better, right? And it doesn't really matter because they're not butting up against any kind of number that scares me in any way. And that move should not prevent them from adding or retaining the talent to keep them competitive. That's the whole thing. How I approach, I matter as a fan, but how I view the Reds' approach into free agency and spending is, is there any move that has been made that's going to preclude them from either retaining talent that we would really like to keep or adding key pieces that they really need to add? I don't think we're anywhere close to that.
Yeah, I concur with all that. The Reds in history have not made their big signings till closer to Christmas. So it's still early, based on what the Reds are. It just seems like right now everything's held up on Ohtani. Like you're not going to see a whole lot of big multi-year deals. Now there might be some of these guys that are, going to say, "Hey, this is a good value for me on a short-term deal or a lower number," and they're going to go. But everyone else thinks that they can get more. Even some of the trades, like it sounds like the Dylan Cease talk is kind of calmed down a little bit because the White Sox are like, well, let's wait till Ohtani's done because we might be able to get a team that feels a little more desperate after Ohtani goes, one of the big players that are in the market for him. So
it's a huge domino thing, right? I mean, if like even somebody like Candelario is probably waiting to see, like, all right, if so-and-so whiffs on Ohtani, like, a big market team is going to have some money to spend potentially. Like, what's the point in going and signing for $39 million 3 years with a Cincinnati when, the Dodgers might have 45 for me here in a couple of weeks if they really miss out. So it's affecting pitching and hitting markets. I really do think. And, that obviously with the few Japanese pitchers that have been posted as well, there's just some huge, kind of dominoes that need to fall before the rest of stuff can fall. I'm surprised there's been as much action as there has been, honestly, on the Red side, at least.
Yeah, I was surprised both of those deals happened last week. I feel like if they had happened like on Tuesday, it'd feel a little bit more like, hey, we're right in the middle of the winter meetings. But it kind of happened right before like Reds Fest, which I know, Sully, you're out of town, but like here, it kind of almost felt like some of those kind of got swept under the rug a little bit, which is wild because this is legitimately two of the bigger free agents the Reds have signed. Like the Reds don't sign many free agents, especially free agents like Nick Martinez is making $14 million next year. That's significant for at least this franchise.
100%. And I look, if I'm looking at what they've spent so far, $22 million for 2024. Like, do I think they could have got more wins above replacement for $22 million? I do, but at the same time, we need them to add reliever, and I mean, stuff's expensive, man. It's the Reds are not players in this water usually, right? And I don't know if Reds fans are fully like aware now of what, at least from what I read online, what some of this replacement level stuff costs, right? Like to get a win above replacement might cost $8 million, right? And that's crazy. When I was a really much bigger baseball fan 10, 12 years ago, it was like $4 million, and it really has doubled over the course of a decade.
Yeah, what did Eric Fetty sign for 2 years, $15 million? I mean, like, he's a guy just coming back from Japan, had one good year in Japan after a lot of bad years in the majors, and he's getting $15 million guaranteed right off the bat. So yeah, I mean, contracts just probably whatever people are signing for, you should say take half of that, and that's probably about what like the normal thought process is what we think a contract would be valued at.
Which I said this to you earlier this week too, is there's people out there that think Hunter Green $16 million in 2028 for his first free agent year is not a good deal. Yeah. I mean, think how good that has. I mean, of course he can get hurt, of course he could show up, but like that is probably going to look really, really, really good here in a few years. And if I'm the Reds, again, they're in such a ridiculously unique situation. I can't ever remember a time, definitely in Reds history, where they have this clean slate of truly choosing your own adventure, right? And having this run of guys all in the same window to say, like, all right, this really should be a long competitive window. And it's, again, if you game all this stuff out way down the line, I mean, there's opportunities to, I know this probably sounds sacrilegious now, and I know we're focused on 2024, but like, Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McClain are both Boris guys, and like they're just, I'd be absolutely stunned if either of them were here past 6 years. But if you had this middle infield depth that, hey, in 3 years, like Ellie's trade value is still probably going to be absolutely through the roof, right? And you can trade him and replenish a lot of other areas and replace him with up the middle infield depth that you have. Like there's enough stuff going on in other layers into the future that's like, hey, maybe we don't ship Edwin Arroyo out right now, right? I mean, like it might make the 2024 Reds better, might make the 2025 Reds better if he's involved with Dylan Cease, but like that may not be the right move.
We got breaking
Oh
news.
no! Oh no!
We got breaking news.
This
Eduardo,
sucks.
not for the Reds. Eduardo Rodriguez and the Diamondbacks have advanced to discussions about a multi-year contract. A deal is not finalized, but the NL champs are among the finalists. I don't know. Resident Force said Erod to the D-backs, and I thought it was, and then I didn't read the whole thing, and now it's not finalized. Resident Force, you threw me off, but it sounds like it's probably happening, just like Soto's probably happening.
Yeah, we'll find out. That's we talk about dominoes with Ohtani, but there is a second level to this that I think that could move the needle a little bit too, right? Like the White Sox can sit around and they can act like the Cease is needs to be at this value in order to move him. But if let's just say I don't know, but I'll just say there's 3 really genuinely interested teams that are kind of at the table that are willing to start to give the White Sox close to what they're looking for. And then you add in the fact that Glass now, let's say he moves off the board to one of those teams that was supposedly interested in Cease. The White Sox might be in a position now where they're like, okay, we might be a little more apt to try to move the needle here and move this along and get the deal done. So I'm all on board with the idea that Ohtani might lead the whole entire revolution of a domino effect of people moving. But as any other negotiation goes in life, as soon as you feel like there's an opportunity for something to slip away that you desire, it almost doesn't really matter what you had felt like before. You're in a new position. So I don't know where exactly the Reds are. And the $1 million question, in my opinion, and you'll never get a truthful answer out of Nick Krall and Meter and all these guys, is what do they truly believe they have for 24? If they truly believe that they could win 90 plus games with the core that they have, I think that they would be willing to move on someone like a Dylan Cease or a Glass now, even if it hurt. And it's going to hurt. Like can we all at least agree on that? Like if we're going to get a guy that has struck 200 guys out for 3 straight years and has been a part of the Cy Young conversation, and he's got 2 years control, it's going to come at a cost. And the question is, are you willing to say inside the room that, hey, we actually believe that Will Benson and TJ Friedel and Marte, and I'll even put in CES in that mix. I believe in McLean, which out of all of them, maybe he ends up struggling the most. Who knows? That's the crazy part about all this, is that the question I have to the group is, what is it that we're comfortable with here? Because if we want to do what Sully mentioned, which I'm not opposed to, of saying, hey, if our philosophy is we're not going to extend guys, we're going to run these guys out to their 5th and 6th years, and we might trade them at the very, very last leg of this to try to replenish this system, then ultimately you would be a little more apprehensive maybe to let go of Petty and Louder. Like that's where I'm at. You can't get Rhett and get Petty and then also not truly believe behind closed doors that you can go out and genuinely win in 24 and 25.
Yeah, and maybe I used Arroyo. Maybe I should have said Collier in there, right? To say like maybe Collier fits the next window, the next role, the next phase better, and Arroyo is truly blocked for, I don't think he's MLB ready just yet, but starting in 25 probably is, right? And if you're asking, do I feel comfortable with it as it stands now? No, but I think there's some couple pretty simple moves they could make that I would start to feel really, really comfortable, right? Some kind of a big, dumb right-handed bat that's going to hit some lefty pitching that can DH against lefties and play a little bit of position stuff. Yes, another glove in the outfield. I still just don't love how the glove. I've been trying to find the righty hitting outfielder that solves a lot of our problems and can pick it in the field. That's something I feel like Reds fans are not talking enough about. Is like the Reds defense was bad last year, like really bad, and isn't really slated to improve a whole lot as it stands right now. Especially if they stick with Stevenson behind the dish, and they got to. they got to get better, either a lot better on offense or a lot better in the field, right? One of those two. I don't know if you can accomplish both of them with what's out there on the free agent market and how many roster spots they have, but if you get better in one of those, then I feel a lot better. Let me clarify. If you get better in those through only spending money, I'd feel a lot better about spending any prospect capital on something like Cease. But I still think I'm not in a hurry to do Cease with what's out there on the free agent market right now. That's only going to cost you dollars, and they have those to spend.
I'd much rather the Reds be going after free agents than blowing through the farm system. I differ a little bit. I don't think if the Reds are, projected right now to win 90 games, I'm necessarily saying, yep, I'm full speed ahead. I think you should always be playing the prospect game. I think you should always be thinking 5 years ahead. I think that's how, smart franchises work. The big thing that we don't know, though, is how many of these free agent pitchers are actually interested in coming to pitch for Cincinnati. That's the question, the answer that I don't know. Like a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez, the Reds have had talks with. There's been several reports of that. Would the Reds have to pay such a high premium for him to come pitch at Great American Ballpark that makes it not worth it for the Reds? I don't know the answer to that. Is that why they're looking more at the trade route? But yeah, I mean, if you're someone who's been constantly going after ownership, I don't know why I feel like if you say just go make a big trade, throw in all your chips on your prospect, I kind of feel like you're giving ownership a big pass on that.
Yeah, the only pushback I would say a little bit here, guys, is we're not going to be in a position to go after starting pitchers of the value of a Dylan Cease in the open market. It's just not going to happen. Yep. It's not going to happen. We're not in that boat. We're not a part of that. We're not a part of that elite group of franchises that can go do those things. So and again, this is where I'm a little opposite sometimes of the narrative of the prospect hugging. And I know that I hate that term, but I feel like that's the term that gets used the most, is that if you are consistently good at developing and you believe that your edge as an organization is to be able to find guys, scout guys, develop guys, and be able to churn that over. You just got fortunate. You got the number 2 pick. I've said all along, it doesn't move the needle a whole lot with me because ultimately at the end of the day, you still got to get the guy right. And there's a million guys to choose from. And I get it. Number 2 is a lot better than 15. But my main point to all of this is if it is, that's your strength, then you can be willing to say, you know what, if this is the question, this is why it always comes back to the main question of, do you believe behind closed doors? You're going to tell the public, of course you believe in all these young guys. Of course you think you're ready to compete in 24. Meter just stayed there right at the podium and looked you straight in your face and told him that well, our goal is to win the NL Central. Well, no shit. I mean, what else is the guy going to say? So my point is behind closed doors, does he believe that? Because if he does believe that, then I think that he could say, you know what? We love Petty. We love Louder, but we also love Ty Floyd. We think Ty Floyd could be a guy, but we also love XYZ as well in that group of guys. And you know what? If so be it, I still feel confident in myself between the international pool and between drafting, we will replace something like that. Now, the only wild card and the asterisk to all of this, guys, is that you can convince me that they might have one guy in the organization that behind closed doors they think is a do not touch, which is we think this guy could be a Justin Verlander-esque, and I know that's high praise, but that I could understand them saying that. You can't convince me they have 4 of those guys. Yep. You can't convince me of that. So if they're going to be willing to go out and say, you know what, Edwin Arroyo and Louder, and if you're telling me it costs Petty too, that's tough. I get it. But my main point to all of this is that this franchise is not going to be in a position to go get a Dylan Cease. And not be and it's going to have yeah. you're going to have to pay via prospects and not the pocketbook. And that's unfortunately the facts. I wish Kirby we could go out in the free agent market and wait until Cease is on the open market and get him, but we're not going to be able to do that. So,
my counter to that on the this guy and evaluating him is I think the Reds internally thought Nick Senzel was the absolute truth. And I don't think there was any reason to think otherwise when he was coming up. I think they valued Nick Senzel a hell of a lot higher than they valued Matt McLean this time last year. And this is
don't know.
why the numbers game matters. Having a plethora of prospects matter, because even if you're great at evaluating guys, every team's going to miss on some, even teams that are doing a really good job. And that's why maybe there's a guy that you don't believe in, and that might be the better way to look at it. Okay, I don't believe in this guy, we'll trade him, as opposed to saying, well, I really, really believe in this one guy, so I think I can get rid of this other guy that I like. That's where I think you kind of get into a dangerous game, and you cannot miss. You make a trade for Dylan Cease, and you give up 4 really good prospects, you cannot miss. The Reds did that with Matt Latos, and they didn't really miss. It really wasn't that, overall that ended up being, well, and Matt Latos ended up having couple really great years, led to a 97 win team. And again, I don't really love Matt Latos, not going on that road tonight, but that they didn't really miss on that. Rizani Grandal ended up being really good, but it wasn't one of these set the franchise back. But man, you could miss on that, and Cease comes, and Cease isn't really all that good, and you give away 2 pitchers that are all-star pitchers, and it sets your entire franchise back.
You could do a Tyler Mahle trade. I mean, for Minnesota, right? I mean, an injury, and all of a sudden you're like, well, geez, they got, not only did they turn Hajar into Will Benson, they got Spencer Steer and CES out of that. Like, I'm with you, Trace. We're not going to get a Dylan Cease on the free agent market. At the same time, the only way the Reds are going to build competitive teams this year, next year, any year, is through like a significant amount of homegrown talent, 6 years controllable, right? I mean, it just a small market team, that it just so much has to come from that, because the Reds are never going to be able to pay $10 million per at every position on the field, right? That's just not going to happen. So you have to have these windows where, 6 years of control of somebody is so much, and there's so much value in that, right? So it's like, hey, is 6 years of Chase Petty worth 2 years of Dylan Cease, even like straight up, like, to hand in the bush, whatever all that phrase might be. Like, of course, right. Like the immediate payoff is nice. And at the same time, it's like, it's really hard to watch a guy go and tear it up somewhere else and miss out on a lot of years of control. So it's tough. Now, all that being said, the Reds have such a solid and deep core right now. They're not, if I'm looking at like the prospects that are on the verge of making the team, or even around high A, there's no one in particular that we're really waiting on. Like, once so-and-so gets here, that's when it's go time. And that tells me they have some capital to spend, right? I mean, there's some weaknesses in starting pitching, and I'd hate to deal from that depth, but like if we're talking about filling in the top of the rotation, and a totally separate conversation, if we could talk about filling in at catcher, I'd be super interested in moving prospect capital to fill in one of those two things.
That's the tough part, is what are they going to do with the catching situation? I don't know. You and me both sounds like are on the same page there. I don't want to kill our guys. I'm really trying not to do that as much anymore. I'll do it during the regular season, and I don't know. Is Kevin Newman still on the roster? I don't know. I don't think he is, but
still available.
He's still available. I wonder why. They put out the Reds did a little cute little thing on social media today. I don't know if you've seen it, but they put like a fake lineup card out, and they were trying to be funny or whatever. And I almost commented on it. No Kevin Newman, no problem with me. So anyway, back to my point here to you two is that, listen, we can't, all I'm saying is I'm all for the prospect game. I'm not naive to it. It all comes down to what's a fair deal. There's risk reward in all of this. I do believe in positive momentum though, guys. Like, I do believe in that. And you can say whatever you want, but if you go out and get a Cease, and you could say it's a pipe dream, a Cease, like Evans obviously said, it's not a pipe dream. Like, if you believe, put it this way, if you believe that this organization has as many prospects that we believe in as we do, they're not all going to play for the Cincinnati Reds in the big leagues. It's literally impossible. It's literally impossible. There's not enough spots on the roster to play. This isn't a football team. There's not 22 people that get to go out there on both sides of the ball and playing the same game. So having said that, then at some point, I think we all can agree that, and I'm going to put my full faith in Nick Krall until he just burns my ass. But if he believes that, hey, I want to keep building this momentum, and Dylan Cease is going to do that. I mean, you can say whatever you want. He would be arguably, he's the opening day starter. Day one. And that's not a simple thing to go find. And I love Hunter Green as much as anybody, guys. Maybe I don't, but hey, there's not a whole like. Let me say, if we send Hunter Green to another organization, I can tell you right now, they ain't going to be on the message boards jumping for joy, acting like they got Dylan Cease is what I'm getting after. So I'm just saying, like, you can shake your head, you guys can cry. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope Hunter Green goes out and shoves, but he hasn't struck 200 guys out for 3 straight years. He's not been a part of the Cy Young conversation. I know that. So let's not sit here and downplay what Dylan Cease can be, is all I'm saying.
I would be 1 billion times more excited if the Reds acquired Hunter Green with 5 years of control than Dylan Cease for 2 years of control.
And you're and that's fine, but that's the same mouth that also told me that Will Myers was going to have a higher thing than Spencer Steer. Like you know what I'm saying? Like it's not a guarantee, or else we would all just go out and figure out exactly who it is. I'm just painting the picture, the full breadth picture here. That hey, let's not downplay what Dylan Cease can be. That's all.
I think 2 things. If it was 3 years of control for Cease and not 2, I think I'd feel different about it. And there's just enough from 2023 from Cease that makes you just question whether or not he is top of the line starter 2024 and going forward, right? I mean, obviously 21, 22 were like out of control good.
What was it last year that made you think that?
I mean, if you look at his like baseball savant page, seeing expected ERA go down, like almost everything went down in some capacity.
He had 2 really, really bad starts. Really, really bad starts. And listen, I'm not suggesting that it does count, but I would ask you, Sully, as a golf guy, would you rather your year where you're top 5 in 2 of the majors and you have a chance to win 2 majors and then just miss the cut in the other 2? Or would you rather go out in all 4 majors and finish top 20? That's my point.
I get it.
You're getting a top line guy. There's only a handful of these guys in Major League Baseball. He is one of those that I would argue that if it came down to a 1-game situation, he's on the short list of people that you would want.
Seriously. And this is where I have to throw my hands up and cede like to the scouts. Like I can't tell you why his 23 was different than 22, right? And did the Red? If is there something that explains that? Probably. That they would know that much better than we would, right? About whether or not there's an arm problem of any kind or a technique change. All that stuff is way, 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 way above my pay grade. So that's the part where I would throw my hands up. But it's just enough to say, man, I don't know. If you give me 2022 Dylan Cease, go look at that baseball savant page. There's a lot of red there, a lot of red in almost every category. And like he just ends up being kind of pedestrian in a lot of categories. I mean, his K rate is still really good, whiff rate really good, but walk rate, expected ERA, all that stuff just gets kind of it's not shut down. His 2023 was not shut down. That doesn't mean 2024 is not going to be shut down. Hunter Green's 2023 was not shut down. I think he's likely to improve upon that in 2024. So I don't know. There's no sure things in baseball, especially with pitching, and that's just where I get apprehensive. But at the same time, if Dylan Cease was on the Reds starting next year, I'd be pretty freaking excited.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about Cease, and the reason that I'm not saying I'm all in on it, okay? I am just pushing back a little bit on everybody that's acting like Cease. Oh no, we don't even want this. The guy's thrown a ton of innings too. Like he has consistently proven that he can go and throw. There's not one single person that's going to start Major League Baseball on this roster next year as a starting pitcher for this franchise that you could say that about. Not a single one of them.
Yeah,
that kind of matters.
Yeah, no, his durability absolutely is his best quality. It's better than his numbers for sure. I mean, like Dylan Cease had an ERA of 0.24 better than Hunter Green, pitching in a much more pitcher-friendly ballpark. And the fielding independent pitching for Hunter Green was significantly better than Dylan Cease last year, and Hunter Green's 3 years younger. So I think there's risk with Cease. I think Cease would be an incredible addition, but we're not talking about would he be a great addition? We're talking about, is he worth trading a substantial amount of your prospects for? It's not, is he really nice? Would be great for the Reds? Yes, no question. He'd be great for the Reds. But this is a guy, you're making a trade that significantly hurts your farm system.
And the biggest problem is going to be the baseball trade values website, as much as I love it, isn't going to work here because you're bidding up against another, almost every team that has any kind of prospect capital is going to want this dude, and you have to beat their offer, right? Whether or not it's fair isn't same with Glass now, right? I mean, you could easily make a baseball trade values trade that I would do in a heartbeat for Glass now. I mean, there's 10 guys in that kind of surplus range that I would make that trade immediately, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the other team is looking for. So by accounts from what I've heard, and I know some stuff trickled out as well, it would be Collier, Arroyo, and an arm, at least one arm. And when I hear that, I think Petty, right? And that is just right on that line of making me wince like Kirby just did. Like,
there was a report today that it was Petty and Louder, and not one or the other. That's where
that was their ask, right?
I can be maybe talked into what you said, as much as that hurts. I can be talked into. I can see why reasonable people are for that. Louder and Petty plus those two, that's where I go. That this is too much. This is too much risk, and it's absolute. We talk about the risk of not acquiring a starting pitcher, the risk of making that big of a trade. I think is too much.
Because like if it's Arroyo, Collier, Richardson, and Aguilar, I'm doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
right. But there's a reason that's why it's not the trade.
It's going to burn a little bit. And the only other thing,
I'd do Phillips too. I think I would. I think I would trade Phillips before Petty.
Marine Tough saying the window's short. Listen, I don't want to make it sound like I'm the guy that screams and stands on top of the chair and screams and yells and says this franchise isn't trying to win. Sully doesn't need that in his life at all. Trust me.
Thank you, Noah Brown.
Yeah. So anyways, my main point is that I do think that when you have some momentum, it would be nice to capitalize on that momentum. And I'm all for making sure you protect yourself from giving away the farm by all means. But at the same time, if you're going to convince me that I could give away an Arroyo and I could give away whether maybe it's even a Collier, I don't know. But point is you can give away one of those guys with either or Petty or Louder. I would say, and I don't know what you can get back from Jonathan India, who knows, but there's a small chance where you can convince yourself giving away some other pieces that might replenish those guys and you feel okay about it. And, you're never going to have a perfect formula here, folks. But I just say, and I continue to say, I think sometimes people get a little ahead of themselves when they act like some of these guys aren't worth it or this guy isn't good. Dylan Cease is damn good. Let's not sit here and pick him apart. You guys want to tell me, oh, you want to, in the chat here, you guys want innings? Let's just bring back Weaver. I mean, give me a damn break. You wonder why some people hate your guys' guts for being prospect huggers? Because you say shit like that. You're sitting here telling me that, oh, if you want innings eaters, just bring back Weaver. We're talking about Dylan Cease, and you decided to want to put Weaver in the same conversation as him. Now, as a Weaver stan, by the way, a guy that kept telling you at least he throws 5 innings a game, doesn't go out there like, I don't know, Connor Overton, who got hurt. And then you got guys like, I don't know, do you remember Cessna? I know you probably don't remember him, but he's long gone. He couldn't throw more than 1 inning. And oh, by the way, we got a guy like Connor Phillips. I don't even, and again, I'm not trying to crush him, but we went out there with the season on the line and how'd he do? He didn't get one single out through 12 straight guys. And might I remind you, Hunter Green, who is young as well. I just want to remind everybody, we went up to Cleveland, and I think he gave up like 7 runs in 4 innings. So let's just not sit here and downplay all these other guys and act like, oh, look what we got in our farm system. We until they're up here. Listen, if Dylan Cease was on the Cincinnati Reds, this is the last thing I want to say, we would marvel at this guy, and we would act like this guy. We talk about him for the next 20 years about how great Dylan Cease was coming up through our farm system. So I'm not saying you give away the farm for him, but I don't want the slander in here acting like he's just terrible. Which Sully wasn't saying that. I'm talking about the chat.
Who said that?
No one said that.
I don't know, guys. Got some stands in the chat that aren't very happy about my Dylan Cease take.
All right, let's get to the Sully hot board. The Sully official hot board presented by DSC Commodities. I hope you are okay with being sponsored by DSC
I have a rival
Commodities.
sponsor in the
I bet you do.
in that industry. Yeah, this is bad for me.
DSC is a leader in renewable energy, biofuel production, specializing in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. All right, Sully. So, just want to go in order here, or what do we want to do here?
We can. Yeah, these are not in any particular order. I was in your guys' chat last night, just blowing you up on like talk about this guy. We got to add this guy. This is just the guys that I think are would I rather sign Ohtani and Jordan Montgomery and all these guys, like Bellinger, of course, but I'm eliminating some names from the realm of possibility. Some of these are maybe on the stretch edge of possibility, right? I mean, Eduardo Rodriguez there, that'd be the biggest free agent contract the Reds have ever given out, but cannot imagine, again, like I said earlier, I cannot imagine a better time to actually do that, right? I believe you put up there, these are the MLB trade rumors free agent projections, which I use the Fangraphs one, which have been a little low on most of what's gone through so far. But again, that at least on the Reds ones, that's probably, the GABP effect of needing to overpay guys to get them to sign, one, early to come to and two, to get them to come to Cincinnati. But guys that I think would make the Reds a lot better. I think if you sign Eduardo Rodriguez, which sounds like it might be out the window by the time we got to this part of the show, this was part of a grand scheme I had of then if you sign Rodriguez, you have 4, decent to very good lefties in your 6 to 7 man rotation, which is probably too many. And that then makes it possible to move somebody like Andrew Abbott in a deal for Tyler Glasnow and Randy Arozarena if he's available, right? That was a grand scheme play of all of a sudden one of your young lefties, Williamson or Abbott, and Abbott carries a lot more trade value, becomes, basically if you're subbing in 4 years of Rodriguez for 6 years of Abbott, plus getting a year of Glasnow and 3 years of an outfielder like a Arozarena, that gets really interesting to me. It'll take some more prospects to get that deal done, but that was kind of the grand scheme I had with that one. Lugo, I think it's kind of in the same realm of Nick Martinez, of just adding another, again, not top of the rotation arm, but another guy that gets people out. And there's still a lot of innings the Reds need to replace from guys that put up very, very, very bad performances in those innings, and guys that are no longer with the team. Some of those guys might be the same guy. That's not a Luke Weaver joke, but I think he makes the team better. And we beat Stroman up pretty bad when in August at Wrigley, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, that guy looks toast." And I've come back around on Stroman. I know that he was dealing with some blisters and some injuries around that time, and I think his batted ball profile would do really well in Great American Ballpark. And I think Waka fits in that same general realm of like, hey, you add any of those. Rodriguez is a different level than the other three, and I think if you add any of those other ones, you just get a lot better through depth in that area. So those are the pitching guys. I welcome any comments on any of those.
I'm the only one that I'm and this is all obviously speculation. There's nothing. I don't really love Marcus Stroman to a certain extent, and largely just based off the fact that the way the year ended. And I get you're trying to take the full breadth of picture, and maybe it's the fact that he wore a Cubs uniform too, and I know that shouldn't matter, but
that makes it better for me, right?
You think so? Yeah,
no, that makes it better. That would hurt them a little bit more.
It could. And again, maybe I'm being too speculative on the fact that Stroman just reminds me of
well,
I shouldn't say this on the internet, but Amir Garrett-ish. It's like, okay, this guy's great if it's going well, but as soon as it starts going bad, it's like, this guy just kind of irritates the shit out of me because it's the way he acts. But that's here nor there.
Yeah, I mean, his projections for next year are 7.5 strikeouts per 9, almost three walks per 9. And he had a 57% ground ball rate this past year, right? So he's projected for 2.6 wins above replacement on Fangraphs for this coming year. Like that's a top 3 pitcher on the Reds, at least, at minimum. And that makes the Reds a lot better. That, again, like all these things just make the Reds better. I really do think. Sure, he might get lit up, but his kind of peripherals check out to me, and I've fallen in love with that ground ball rate. It's the Reds should obviously be looking for guys like that. So I don't think they're done in pitching. I think they've said they're not done in pitching, and I would be thrilled to see either of those guys come across the bottom line to say that the Reds had signed him. I'm more passionate about the hitting side if we want to get into any of those.
Hold on just a second here.
Uh-oh. What do you got? Is there breaking news?
I don't know. Man, this always happens. We're doing something.
No way.
Is it official?
No,
What?
it's source. Eduardo Rodriguez will be signing with the Cincinnati Reds or the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Oh, God,
come on. Just waiting on the player's decision. Man, Mike
that
Rodriguez
doesn't do anything for us.
You just really wanted to F up my podcast tomorrow. That's what this guy did. He's like, you know what? I'm going to wreck his podcast. It's going to sound terrible. It's going to be all over the place. So thank you, Mike. Appreciate you.
Oh, God, that got me hyped there for a second. All right.
I think he's official. I don't know, man.
Do you think the Reds would overpay instead of you have 4 for 82? Is there a chance they overpay just based off the fact that they're spending nothing right now on like a
Sure.
2-year on a 2-year deal? Like I would be more open to that. I think we've all agreed that, the gone are the days of trying to sign a 6-year deal with a starting pitcher in Cincinnati for a significant amount of money. But Nick, what would you think that deal would have to look like to get Rodriguez to want to come to Great American Ballpark?
Well, I mean, he's 30, so I mean, he's still getting into his mid-30s, so that's a pretty good chunk of change. He's probably conceding it's unlikely he gets another big contract. So I don't know if the GABP bump is that huge for them, but I would be all for a deal like that. I mean, I don't think $20 million a year for 4 is that huge of a risk. This is a guy that does have a pretty good track record, at least when he's been on the mound. It's been a little flaky things with them having to leave for some personal issues. I don't want to get into all that, but that is a part of the story when you are talking about spending, close to $100 million on a guy. But I mean, of all the pitchers, this is the guy that I think is by far the best of the realistic group of pitchers that the Reds could be looking at. So, yeah, if they could find a way to make this happen, I would very much be all for it. You're not giving up any prospects. I mean, that's where you take the whole risk of, signing him into 4 years. You're not giving any prospects away.
Yeah. I'd be absolutely stunned though if his deal was not very similar to the one he had with Detroit with like it might be a 5-year deal with a 2-year opt-out, right? I could see very, very easily that that he would want to go back down that path because it's going to get him paid potentially. Those opt-out, those are so valuable. If he gets hurt, they're valuable to the player. If you get hurt or if you really struggle, you can lock a team in for an extra $60 million that they don't really want to pay you. And if you do great, then you can go retest the market again. It's riskier on the Red side, but that's the kind of stuff that they're probably going to have to do to get somebody like that.
And I personally would have no problem with that, Sully. I mean,
I don't either. I mean,
yeah,
it's not our money.
Honestly, I mean, if he pitches 2 years and he's really good, well, he just got 2 years. Have a nice day. You're going to get a qualifying offer pick for him back, so you're not going to be left empty-handed. And I'll go ahead and say it. The Reds just did that with a player. They had him come for 2 years. He played really well. He opted out. And I think the Reds are probably better off for not signing him. And the Reds actually got South Stewart out of it. So they had this exact scenario happen of a 4-year contract. And it ended up working, I think, beautifully for the Reds, other than the 2021 team not making the playoffs.
Well, but the flip side of that is the other guy that they signed to that deal as well.
Moustakas
was you had to ride that contract out.
Moustakas didn't have the opt-outs. I'm saying of the guy that they. No, he didn't. I don't think he had opt-outs.
Well, if he did, he certainly didn't use it for good reason.
Exactly.
He didn't need to.
And that's the point Stolly makes, though. Like that's the thing that's and listen, it's us. Everyone always gets leverage, and it's like almost it seems like the players always find a way to seem like they have unbelievable deals, and these guaranteed contracts in and of themselves are so crazy to me in Major League Baseball. I don't know if it'll ever switch, but man, I would be so apprehensive to do the whole opt-out thing all the time because you're such at a loss, right? Like you're taking a risk on having a guy for 4 years, and if he turns out like Mike Moustakas, you're paying the guy no matter what. But if he turns out like Castellanos, like you had said, then at that point it doesn't matter. You're not going to get him anymore. He leaves, he moves on. You could argue, Nick, yes, that we shouldn't have signed him, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm saying, when you're sitting at the negotiation table, I would love to sit in those and just hear like, is that really the deal breaker? I guess it is. I mean, but it's like it should be. It has to be a deal breaker. Player option versus team option. That must be a huge thing. It should be a huge thing, but it's kind of wild how that could be literally the turning point between getting a deal done or not. I guess.
Yeah, I don't think he had the opt out. I don't know why in my head that he did. Moustakas. Apologies for that.
No, that's okay. Think about it this way, though. Okay, so Cease's 2 years of control. We're thinking Eduardo Rodriguez probably opt out after 2 years, right? I mean, that's pretty much the same thing, and you're not giving up prospects. Like, I would rather go light $50 million on fire than get rid of the 4 players the Reds want for Dylan Cease. Like, those players are worth a lot of money in terms of their value because they're going to be, assuming one of them makes it to the major leagues, they're going to be making dirt cheap money, basically nothing for 3-4 years. So And this is exciting.
You do say that, but I just want to, again, not trying to be the devil's advocate in the room, but Dylan Cease doesn't cost a whole lot of money either, and that also could allow you to go out and get pieces that you might think that you need that you don't foresee coming. That might allow you to go do something that you don't. There's a little domino effect here. I know it sounds like I'm a Dylan Cease stan here, but I'm also not gonna sit here. I'll say this: I think Dylan Cease is a better pitcher than Rodriguez, but
not last year.
Correct. I think going forward, I think I would in a vacuum, I'd rather have Cease, but would I rather have Rodriguez, Petty, Collier, Arroyo, and less money, or Cease and that's an easy one for me, right? That's why Red should not be in a hurry to trade for Dylan Cease unless there's. Anyways, we get to some bats.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
I feel like this is. I feel like a fair amount of Reds fans think the Reds are like set on the position player. Even depth and starting wise, I think that there's some moves to be made here. And number one on my list, I don't know if he's number one on my list. I'm really interested in Mitch Garver. I think that he fills a pretty nice void for the Reds. I think he's definitely a DH against left-handers. He can DH, maybe 50% of the time versus right-handers and maybe catch 20% of the time. That dude hits the baseball. He hits it really freaking hard. And I love Jorge Soler as well. Nick, I know you really love Jorge Soler. I just can't picture him as anything other than a DH. And then I really don't love the idea of paying him probably $18 million a year. I know it says 3 for 45, but I'm guessing he is. I think he's getting 3 for 54 probably. And I stopped falling in love with that because I think you can have a Jorge Soler play a little bit of outfield if you pick it at everywhere else in the diamond, and the Reds just have too many holes, in their defense to put a guy like Soler in the field. So Garver should be cheaper, and he accomplishes close to what you would get out of Soler's bat. I'm curious your reaction to that.
Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, Soler played, I think, 50-something games in the outfield. So this is where you have to. You were talking earlier about how you have to scout. You have to know, do you think he can play right field in Great American Ballpark better, at a more reasonable level than he did at whatever the Marlins ballpark's called? Because that's a much different stadium, obviously. And you're playing road games like half the time, but 82 games at Great American Ballpark versus 82 games in Miami is quite a bit difference. I look at the Candelario projection, to me was just wild. That's huge. That was
4 for 70. Yeah,
I had to read that like 6 times. That's where I'm like, give me Soler. When you're talking, Soler versus like Gurriel Jr. Yeah, Gurriel Jr. probably makes more sense to me, at least.
Yes, he can, because he's going to give you around league average defense, right? And he can hit left-handers. He played plenty against right-handers. I think Gurriel makes a ton of sense. I'm interested in Michael A. Taylor too. I think a guy that he hits lefties, really, really good defender in center field, like elite defender in center field. I'm nervous. I think TJ Friedl has done a great job against left-handers. I'm nervous about running that back, and I'm nervous about running him out there 150 plus games. I think I'm just worried about the Reds' depth as it stands right now against left-handed pitching, because right now you're starting probably Steer, Friedl, and Fairchild in the outfield. And I think I think Gurriel would be my choice out of that, but I think Taylor helps you get to where you would a very good spot. I mean, you can play Friedl in one of the corner outfield spots and play Taylor in center against left-handed pitching. That's a really good outfield. And I don't know, but I just would, again, these are all guys that if I saw that tick across the bottom, I'd be pretty excited. I threw Bader in there as like, that's still a possibility, I think. I mean, I know he did not have a good run with the Reds, but I think he accomplishes a lot of the same stuff that Michael A. Taylor does. I'd rather have Taylor, but pretty similar profiles. And again, I want one more outfielder that can absolutely pick it, because the Reds have one good outfielder right now.
I would say Ken Rosenthal. Reds and Diamondbacks are finalists for free agent left-hander Eduardo Rodriguez. Sources tell me and C. Trent. Telling them both at the same time, Ken and C. Trent. Diamondbacks first mentioned by John Morassi. I hope I say Morassi right. But
well, Well,
Here's the
Trace,
thing,
looks like,
guys.
we're doing 4 straight nights of a show if this
Yeah.
keeps up.
And listen, I will say this about Sully's list right there. I would be shocked if the Reds did not get one of those. I really would.
Yeah.
I think they're in a position where the Reds feel the same way that what Sully just mentioned. I've said that a lot. I really am more or less concerned about what this lineup looks like against left-handed pitching, because it made me puke already last year, and that was with a TJ Friedl that really, quite frankly, played about as well as you could have hoped. I hate putting ceilings on guys. I really do. I don't think it's fair to maybe put a ceiling on TJ Friedl. But if you put me up against the wall and you said you had to tell me what you think about TJ Friedl, I'd say, well, I think that's about the ceiling of what we got, and that's great. If he plays that well again, by all means, I'll take TJ Friedl in center field every single day if he's able to replicate. The question is can he? And then you look in the outfield again, and you have Spencer Steer, who I love Spencer. I think he's a team first guy. He's everything that you could ask for, but he's not much of an outfielder. And if you asked him behind closed doors, I think he probably would tell you that. He's mentioned how many times, Nick, that his favorite position, or the one he's most comfortable with, is second base of all places. So I'm with Sully in the fact that defensively, I'd love to see this team get a lot better. But I guess the only thing I have left to mention with this list is Soler. I would be willing to forego maybe the opportunity of him being maybe a little bit of a detriment in right field, perhaps. Maybe we don't know that for sure, but maybe just off his bat. Like I think there's a chance that guy.
More breaking news.
What we got?
Source from Mike Rodriguez. Sourced: Jeimer Candelario and the Cincinnati Reds have had strong discussions about getting a deal done. A deal is not finalized, but they're among the finalists to sign him. All right, that's not really breaking, but that's nice. I'm a big Candelario guy, man.
This is fun. This is really fun.
I've been a Candelario guy since like August of last year. I've fallen in love again. I'm back to like, the Reds need more depth that can play defense. Like they really do. I'm a little nervous about CES at first base. I think Candelario can be a defensive replacement there. He can play third base a fair amount. I don't, especially with Marte coming off, not being able to be stretched out into the winter league and get it, 162 games in this year. I just would worry about running him out at age 22 for 162 games. That seems unlikely. He's going to get plenty of at-bats. There's a lot of at-bats to fill. This probably means India does get moved if they sign somebody like Candelario, but Steer has good functionality on defense, but I hate his defense. It is bad in a lot of different places, and the metrics show that. And gosh, Candelario just fills so many spots for you, lefties and righties, can DH and can pick it at multiple spots. And he just costs money. I hope it's not 4 for $70. I mean, Fangraphs had him at 3 years for $36. I'm guessing it's probably 3 years, 42, probably closer. I don't think it's 4 for $70. I don't see that valuation anywhere else other than trade rumors. That seems kind of outrageous. Could be wrong.
MLB trade rumors is Mr. Candelario's. They're carrying the water. Yeah,
but like I think
good.
Yeah, good I think this, like if they get Rodriguez, I think that changes the conversation around some of the other guys, right? I mean, I think you can cross Hernandez off the list and probably Soler, right? I mean, I think it just we'd be getting to that point where we start talking about being up against the cap of how much money they're gonna spend. I think they could spend more, but I don't know. I would be stunned if they got more than 3 guys off of this list. Let's say that. I know they're going to get at least one off this. I don't say I know. I'd be stunned if they didn't get one, and I would guess they get 2 names off of this list. I'm hoping for 3.
Do you think they believe in? And I know the chat and people that listen to this podcast might swerve and take their car off a ditch, but when I say this, do you think that there's any life to Barrero? I know that's tough for some people, but I'm not giving up on him. And I also wonder if there's any kind of value you can get in return for a guy like Barrero, and even Stuart Fairchild, because I think there's a little life with Stuart Fairchild. I'm not just saying that because Nick, that's Nick's guy per se, but I genuinely think sometimes guys can get better. I'll just leave it at that. Guys can get better. I mean, how many times did you think TJ Friedl was going to come in and play the way he played is what I'm getting at to a small extent here.
I got bad breaking news now from Gordon Wittenmeyer. Report that the Reds are one of the finalists for free agent pitcher Eduardo Rodriguez is not true.
Okay.
So
Wow.
whoever listens to this tomorrow is going to see our emotional ride through this night on Red's Twitter.
So wait. So Solly, the kid Rosenthal has C-Trit as part of this. We have Reds beat writers giving opposite takes, and this is kind of fun too.
Which, listen, I've read some of Gordon Wittenmeyer's, expectations for next year. I'm going to probably side with C-Trit on this, but I'm surprised for him to say that definitively that he's not in the hunt.
You know what I would love for Netflix to do? Yeah, and I'm being serious. They should follow around these front offices and just do a whole thing on just the off season and the way that it goes, because there's no doubt in my mind that Wittenmeyer is being used as a pawn right now. I don't know if he knows that. But one of them is being used as a pawn. And also, I will tell you right now, for those that are wondering about Martinez, and I don't say many things as a factual way, and no, David Bell didn't just tell me straight to my face, and no, Meter didn't tell me straight to my face, but I'm a guy that pays attention when people talk about things that I'm interested in, and I try to get a tell. They brought him in to be a reliever, folks. They told him they pulled the whole hey, we seen what you were able to do from a starting pitching perspective, et cetera, et cetera. But the Reds, I'm telling you, have no intention of putting that guy in starting rotation. And if they do, it's going to be off of emergency. I really do believe that.
Really?
I believe that wholeheartedly because of the way they both talked. I know David Bell, the first thing out of his mouth was saying, you know what? He's a really big guy. He can help us in the pen. And you know what? He might be able to start for us as well, depending on how things fall. That is a man that has one thing on his mind, and that is to put him in the bullpen. And you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm just saying, for those that are screaming and yelling about how they think Martinez is the only starting pitching help they might get, that will not be true. I'll take that to if I'm wrong on that, I'll serve a suspension.
This is how we do it on our show. We do apology bets. So I'll do an apology bet with you. I'll bet that Nick Martinez is in the opening day or opening rotation. He's in the opening 5 rotation. I would say.
Love that. Whoever's
wrong has to apologize.
Fair enough. I'll do that.
How many do we have? Like an injury? Like if there's 3 injuries, like the bet's nullified.
I mean, just eye test, right? I mean,
that's the only chance he's got, but we'll see.
I think he'll be there. I think.
Well, Nick Lodolo's not going to be healthy. We already know that.
I'm not giving up on Lodolo. I've seen way too many people.
No, but he's not going to be the opening day rotation.
You don't think he will?
The interview he did with Mo Hager made it sound pretty much like it's highly unlikely he's in the opening day rotation.
Both Rosenthal and Citrin are both issuing a correction that they are not a finalist for Rodriguez. What a fun ride that was.
Woo! Candelario, though, still in the sweepstakes.
God, I want a story about how that happened. How did both Rosenthal and Citrin get told that he was a finalist?
Because somebody that didn't get the memo, Solly, in the front office of the Reds told those guys, or somebody, the source for the Reds, told those guys because they actually are in the running. And one of the boss men got a hold of that and said, "What the are we doing? We don't want anyone else knowing this. We're trying to pull behind the scenes negotiations of all these different things. The last thing we want, go call your boys up and you tell them that that's not the case." That's what happened.
Dang.
All right.
So I think it's still on. I'm just going to tell you.
Go get Mitch Garver. How about that? He won't cost you that much. You will not regret having that bat on your team. I promise you that. Anybody I'm missing?
I like the Mitch Garver one was fascinating because I did not even consider the possibility of him, and you brought that up, and I'm like, well, his bat was good enough to DH for the world champions. So obviously his bat plays, and he can play catcher. I mean, I don't know how many games he could legitimately play catcher, but he gives you some protection there. Definitely a fascinating, and he hits. I think he hits. Does he hit left-handed pitching really well?
He does.
Yeah,
so he does.
He checks a lot of boxes.
I mean, the only downside is like it kind of creates a little bit of a Spencer Steer problem because I want to DH Steer a lot next year. But again, that's in the category of good problems, right? I think adding a lot of these bats gives you a lot of good problems. And there's what I like about what the Reds have going. There's only a couple spots where they don't have any depth. Like that's why that's why we're all interested in the right-handed outfielder, right? Is there's no depth right now against left-handed pitching in the outfield, but almost any injury you can sustain right now as the roster, is set, right? If Marte gets hurt, Ellie slides over to third, McLean moves over to short, and India plays second base. If CES gets hurt, Steer goes to first base. There's just so much stuff that they can cover off on right now, which is, we saw how much they got ravaged by injuries last year. I still wouldn't mind a little bit more depth in this, even if it makes it uncomfortable, like benching for 2 to 3 times a week for like a Gurriel signing or something like that. I still just want the depth.
Yankees, Padres, Soto, Trent Grisham to the Yankees, now complete Joel Sherman. So we're really just rolling right along with all the breaking news tonight. Although I care much more about Michael Wacha than who the Yankees are getting. I want to ask each of you guys this. Let's take Eduardo Rodriguez in a different category. Trace, of Lugo, Stroman, Wacha, who do you think is the best at that best value? Or the best you think would be the
tough. Listen, it all comes down. It's not our money, right? Like that's the thing, and that's the only, when we say it's not our money, the only thing I'm apprehensive of always doing is saying, okay, are they willing to spend that money elsewhere if we were to need it but I've already spent it type thing, or is this one of those situations where, let's face it, ownership groups are human and they probably can become emotional too. And it wouldn't surprise me if you're able to convince an ownership group to spend more money at certain times versus others. And I'm not trying to play some crazy, conspiracy theory here, but just off the heels of Reds Fest during the holiday season, maybe you could convince me it's a little bit of a better time perhaps to go to the piggy bank and ask old daddy for some more bucks. I don't know. But if you're asking me of those guys, I guess I would like Lugo. Rodriguez, obviously it sounds like he's not going to be a part of it, but I would say Lugo, but that's mostly just based off of process of elimination of the others, I guess.
Stroman, Lugo, Wacha for me, but I would still be quite excited to have Wacha.
I'm Wacha number one. I feel
Really?
like Wacha's like very undervalued. Like he's put together like 2 really good years. I know his peripherals aren't maybe as dazzling, but the fact that he's been able to, 2 straight years, he made over 23 and 24 starts. He's made a pretty substantial amount of starts, at least in today's game. I feel like he's undervalued, especially at like what that projection comes in. The one thing I really like about Stroman, at least just looking at just this projection and take it for whatever it's worth, the 2 years is what really makes it attractive to me. I love that I'd rather the Reds pay a couple $1 million extra for 1 less year or 2 less years or whatever, to save those years, because the years are always the thing that kills me the most with these deals. All right, so let's go to the offensive players. Let's take out Teoscar Hernandez because he feels like he's maybe in a class of his own. Sully, pick one player other than Teoscar Hernandez. Who's the one you would take if it was up to you?
You're making me choose. Oh gosh, that's hard.
Choose between family, right?
I know it's Gurriel, Candelario, or Garver. And I think again, I'm a big defense guy, and it's probably Gurriel. I think among that. I don't know. It fills the biggest need, right? I think Candelario and Garver are better players and maybe give you more WAR, if you will, but it fills a need. Oh, I don't know. I love Candelario though. I might be the biggest Candelario fan. I'm not even positive why.
You're just so deep into it at this point.
It's not sexy. Like nothing of what he does is sexy, but like you just need, like, the versatility is really valuable. It really, really is. And the righty and lefty splits are almost even, and good defense. That's just a really high floor player, and just a good depth piece to have on your team.
I think the best value, people might kill me for this one too. I think the best value is going to be Harrison Bader.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. Because if anything, David Bell's proved that he likes platooning. I mean, and he believes in that. And there's not going to be a better value platoon player than Harrison Bader for the Cincinnati Reds, especially when you add in the idea or the opportunity to bring him in late in the game to be a defensive replacement. And you're going to be spending significantly less money. And again, newsflash, everybody that gets mad about it, I'm also willing to go spend some of that extra money we're saving somewhere else to help us out. So I'm using some of the leverage here of saying it's a value. I don't think that Harrison Bader, to be clear, is better than maybe even the rest of the list that's on here. So
yeah, I do think, look, we were excited about when Harrison Bader came over. I mean, he made 34 plate appearances for the Reds. So that was a incredibly small sample. He also, we think, was hurt. I mean, he was put on the IL. Who knows if that was just a phantom IL or not, but he was actually put on the injured list at the end of that. I do think, like Great American Ballpark seems like a park where he could really hit in or really produce well in as a guy that does have some pop, can play that elite defense. So I like Bader. I'm riding with Soler. I look at his expected stats against left-handed pitching. It was the third best in baseball last year behind Acuna and Mountcastle by 0.001 points. And then like the next one's like 25 points below. I think that any of these players, like you're looking at here, there's going to be some risk with any of them. I feel like, and Soler's not perfect. The defense, and I'm a big defense guy. I've preached that forever. But I just think the upside that he brings is a guy that could just absolutely mash, completely change your entire, like he's one player that you bring in, he can completely change your entire lineup against left-handed pitching. I think he's that good, that valuable. I would run the risk with him. I wouldn't go more than 3 years though. 3 is the max with him. I would not go that 4th year. But man, I would love to get Soler.
Yeah, I would too. I just think a store brand Soler is Garver, right? And I'd rather have a little bit of catching functionality there. I mean, dude, Garver was 938 OPS against lefties last year, 500 on base percentage, walking 22% of the time against left-handed pitching. And I mean, the Reds were dead last in WAR last year in catching, right? And they're going to ride it up back with Tyler Stevenson, and other people are more hopeful than I am that he can be an offensive beast. I'm very confident he will not be a defensive beast, and I know Garver won't. But if you really want to play like the offensive catcher DH guy, like it's not Stevenson, it's Garver. That's my opinion.
So to be clear, and I think it's an okay take. I'm not suggesting it's this. When I say it, it might sound like I'm super, super against it, but the fact that they already went out and they signed Maley, you're basically saying there's a chance where you just don't. Stevenson's just gonna not play a whole lot.
I don't think they will do that. I think it is. I think the Reds are better if he's maybe playing 50% of the time versus 70% of the time, right?
Oh, you won't hear me complain about it.
Garver could also just be flat out insurance because he's good enough to just be a DH.
Correct.
Right? I mean, he's good enough to be a DH, especially maybe, somewhat of a platoon. Not maybe not a full platoon, but really you would bring him in against left-handed pitching. So he has value in just that. And so you don't have to catch him. But if Tyler Stevenson, you get through spring training, you give Tyler Stevenson a month into next year, and there's just absolutely no progress whatsoever, I would view him more of an insurance policy than like a guy that for sure benches Tyler Stevenson, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And look, again, that's into the scouting department as well. Of there has to be Tyler can't be as bad as he was this past year, right? I really don't think he can. And I know he had flashes at times, but I mean, overall, it was a almost -1 win season, which is just really, really frustrating. Again, the defense at the catcher spot is really, really, really important. As long as they don't have robotic umpires, I was hopeful that would come into place in 2024, and all of a sudden Stevenson's value does go up if there's robotic umpires and there's no framing, no runs lost due to framing, which he's one of the worst in baseball at that. But I don't think that's going to happen. It does not seem like that's going to happen. Maybe for 25, and all of a sudden he becomes somewhat valuable. But I mean, you just got it. You can't not hit and not field. I mean, that's very obvious, but like that's what we're dealing with Stevenson. At least it was last year. And you got to hit really freaking good to carry, that that poor of a defensive performance behind the plate.
Two things really quickly. It wouldn't be a Reds season without Nick Kirby championing the 3-catcher opportunity.
I know you love that. That's what I'm saying. Like this addresses that, right? But it gives you value past what Casale would have given you.
Yeah, no doubt. And the last thing is like there's some folks saying, hey, you know, the Bader thing, and they reference back obviously his time here. I just think that's a very short-sighted approach on looking at Harrison Bader. If Harrison Bader would have gotten hot for 2 weeks here, we would have been screaming and yelling, and I say we, but the fan base would have been screaming and yelling about how we need to go and get this guy again. And I get that some of just fandom, right? But then the other side of it is that if we did the same thing to some other guys throughout this year, how would we feel about them? You know, I look at Will Benson. Will Benson was somebody who was terrible, quite frankly, for the first month he was here. Yes, he went down to AAA, came back, and you could argue he was the best player we had for a 3-month stretch. So, you know, I guess it's just caution to say, hey, when a guy has 30 at-bats for your organization, let's not just sit here and act like, you know, that you've seen enough, per se. So, and you know what? That's my biggest point with this Reds team moving forward is I think ultimately at the end of it all, we can sit here and debate on who they should go and get, who they can't get, and why they shouldn't go get this guy, keep prospects, don't keep prospects. But it all comes down to whether or not these guys develop and they get better. We need Tyler Stevenson. If they're going to play him 50% of the time, and heaven forbid more, he has to be better. I mean, there's no other way around it. And I hate to say this, and I don't mean to sound like I'm already out on the guy, but I guess I kind of am. I'm with Sully a little bit. I think I'm speaking for him slightly. And correct me if I'm wrong, is that I just don't see him getting better behind the plate. Like he is who he is behind the plate. No, there's not going to be a magic silver bullet, no magic pill he's going to take that makes him a better defensive catcher. I do genuinely agree that he could become better offensively. I don't think he can be that bad again. But that's my point, is that that's the worry I have. I'm right there with Sully. Like, do you trust Tyler Stevenson in the World Series when when guys are on first and second in the 7th inning? And I think ultimately many people know that answer.
And that's where like a fair amount of, I feel like the second half of last year, I was studying prospect lists and teams that have depth at catcher. And I'm willing to trade something of great value for a catcher of the future. Right. I think I don't think that answer really is jumping off the page as being in the system right now. And I look at like what the Cardinals have going on behind the plate, what the Brewers have going on behind the plate. And it's tough. I mean, it's just tough to spot like those, like spotting the Brewers 6 to 7 wins just off the catcher position is a really tough thing to make up. It really is. It's a lot of wins.
Yeah,
Garver doesn't address that, right? But I think it just helps fill that in just a little bit. Just color between the lines just a little bit.
I really hope Tyler Stevenson has a really good off season. Coming off an injury last year, you know, has the full off season to get his work in. Man, if he comes back, and it is wild how quickly and Stevenson just fell off. And it's a cautionary tale for everyone else in the Reds roster right now. And just, you know, just as quickly as Tyler Stevenson fell off, he could just as quickly get back on if he has a good April, right?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of Stevenson's early career, you know, success was driven by BABIP luck. I mean, if you just look at it, they were just pretty unsustainable batting averages on balls in play, which if we're looking at who's likely to come back on that front, I mean, Will Benson hits the sweet spot more than anyone else in the Reds lineup, and there's a good reason to support a high above average batting average on balls in play. But as much as I am a Benson fan, there almost has to be some regression there. And honestly, and I'm not like a StatCast, you know, religious StatCast follower. I think there's some noise within it as well that, you know, doesn't fully describe you as a player. But next on that list might be McLean. As much as I love McLean, like there just might be some regression in his offensive production just based on a pretty darn high batting average on balls in play. I know no one wants to hear that but it's you know, when somebody's hitting it, when somebody's grooving it, it never feels like it's going to end. But almost everyone comes back in some form or fashion with their batting average on balls in play.
Tyler Stevenson's 2022 and 2023 are just wild, and 2022 is a very small sample. But He had a 318 expected weighted on base average in 2022 and a 135 weighted runs created plus. And then last year, it only went down to 314, dropped 4 points, and he went down to 85 WRC plus. So what you kind of hope with Stevens is that the truth is somewhere in the middle there. And if he's like a 105, 110 WRC plus guy, if he can get the defense up to even close to average, he's a solid catcher.
If he's not above 100 weighted runs created plus, I'm good with Tyler Stevenson. He's going to give some of that back in defense, but for a catcher, that's good production. I can totally live with that.
The only real pushback I have on the catcher depth that we have right now, and Maley's okay, but if it's almost like the perfect serviceable backup or the perfect serviceable person that would be behind Stevenson would be a great defensive catcher. I
like Maley. I think Maley fills a great role. I do. I think a lot of what else is out there on the catching market looks a lot like Maley, but it's a different trade-off. It's a much better defender. Like Maley's just slightly above average defender, much better, but truly cannot hit at all. And Luke can hit it, man. I mean, that dude, he hits the ball hard when he gets hot. I think Maley is a perfect, I don't even want to call him backup catcher, like a perfect 1B catcher. I feel great about Maley in that spot. I just wish we got more production out of it. And just to finish that thought, Matt McLean had a 385 batting average on balls in play last year. Noelvi Marte had 384, and Will Benson was 391. You can bet that those are going to go down at least a little bit. I think that's a fair bet.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just, at the end of the day, the only concern I have, similar to college football, when you have two quarterbacks, you might not have any. So
I think you can have as many catchers as possible, and it's going to be a good thing in baseball.
All right, I guess you were 480. 480. Oh, man.
That was the exact prediction, right?
Yeah, I guess MLB trade rumors. Give it to him. Give it up. It was 482, I think.
What did Fangraphs have E-Rod at? He was 4 years, 76 mil.
Wow. Yeah.
I'd have done that in a heartbeat. I would have done that in a friggin' heartbeat.
Yeah. But again, maybe that deal doesn't happen for Cincinnati. It's hard to know. It's really hard to know what you've accepted that. It's pure speculation.
It's not as easy as us fans would like to make it seem, unfortunately. But bummer.
Well, Sully, any other parting words of wisdom? We've dragged you on here for almost an hour and a half.
Extend Noelvi Marte. Do it now.
Yeah, there it is.
Do it now. I don't care what it costs. I don't care what incentives you need to build in. Extend Noelvi Marte. Do it now. I want McLean and Ellie to at least start thinking about it. I want Noelvi driving a fancier car than they're driving, showing up to the ballpark every day, and I want them to at least think about becoming multi-millionaires guaranteed right away, and going to Boris and saying, like, look, I know what you normally do here, but I wouldn't mind getting extended and getting a little bit more front loaded here. But I would buy out at least 2, maybe 3 years of Noelvi and a club option on top. As of right now, you're releasing Marte into the free agent market when he's going to be 27, which is like absolute peak. Like, we're eating his age 22 and 23 years and going to miss his age 28 and 29 years, which, I mean, if you look at normal progression of MLB players, like you'd rather have those later years, right? And there's a lot of different deals you could look at. You could look at Michael Harris deal. You could look at Corbin Carroll deal. It wouldn't cost Corbin Carroll. I mean, his is, I think I don't have it in front of me, like 10 years, 111 million or something like that. But I think something along the lines of 8 years, 60 million plus incentives, maybe 70 million plus incentives would be a great deal. I know he's not quite the prospect that Jackson Chourio is, and he's definitely not the prospect that Jackson Chourio is, but I'm a huge Marte guy, and man, I would love to start getting some of these free agent years locked up, because that's going to be really, really, really valuable into the future.
100%. 100%. I'm all on the extend Marte trade.
And I would do Ellie and McLean if it was an option. But I mean, just go read any, like Boris calls those contracts snuff contracts. Like you just snuff out all the value, from his clients, and it just really, really is not going to happen. So,
will we have news within 24 hours? Yes or no? On one guy coming to your Cincinnati Reds.
I'd be more surprised. I mean, I would not.
Well, that's
take
not
that
it. This
bet.
isn't the political answer. Okay, Nick. This is a yes or no.
No.
No. All right.
I'm gonna say yes. I think something happens tomorrow. I mean, look how
There you
close we
go.
were on
There you
Erod, right? It basically, we got
We were right there. We were right there.
for like 38 seconds. We were right there.
We were Gordon Meyer away from making it happen.
Do the Reds get one of Lugo, Stroman, or Waka?
No.
Yeah, I would say no. I mean, possible, but yeah.
I'm gonna say yes because I want to believe.
I would say yes to one of those offensive players, but I don't really feel like that's really going that far out there. But I would say one of these guys end up in Cincinnati.
I hope it's not Bader of all those.
I think Candelario is going to happen.
There's a lot of smoke. There is a lot of smoke there, and
I can't believe there's been no rumors for any outfielders though. Like nothing.
Yeah, are they just waiting for Ohtani? I mean, I don't know. I mean, does Ohtani really change the need for Soler for teams? I don't know. I really don't. I know, like I heard, like JD Martinez wants to go back to the Dodgers, but it's pretty much just waiting for Ohtani. So I don't know if there's one. I do have one. I had one little dumb thought that popped into my head that I want to run by you. Do you think that Nick Krall and the Reds front office could ever be here playing such 3D chess that some of the players that they know that the Cubs are really interested in, the Reds maybe try to throw a little bit more interest than they are to try to push the market on some of those guys? Do you think that's possible?
I don't know if the Reds win in that game, right? I don't know. I'm a Krall guy. I like Krall. I know you love Krall. He's hit some big ones. He's hit some really big ones. I'm not positive he is a savant, and I'm quite positive he's not a savant and everything he touches is gonna go to gold, right? I love the way he plays it. I love the way he spreads his roulette chips, and not all these things are gonna hit. He's done a fantastic job, but I'm not quite sure I'm all the way on the train of every move he does turns to gold. I mean, Will Myers was not that long ago, right? So I want to see him keep hitting on these. I love the direction the Reds are going in, but I'm not positive.
Who was the other starting pitcher that we signed right before the year 2 years ago?
Mike Minor.
Mike Minor. Yeah,
that was the weirdest move ever.
He got a chance to really prove himself now. I mean, this is the first time since 2020 where the Reds have been signing players while they're trying to win. I think there's something different to signing players when you're trying to win versus trying to sign filler players that are just literally coming here to get deals done.
So let's go back. I'm wondering this myself, right? As somebody that absolutely hated everything that happened with the Winker, Suarez, everything that happened with that teardown, hated it, right? And I think there's a lot of scar tissue there from all Reds fans of just the Reds being cheap. Do we view that any differently now as the Reds are sitting here in a really freaking good position? Was that more of a genius move than we realized at the time? If we knew that the turnaround was going to be this quick, would we have been upset about how all that went down? And in hindsight, are we upset about it? I think would people have probably flipped the Petty Gray trade to have had a chance at the winning division this year? I would do that. But as a whole, aren't we like pretty thrilled with how things have gone and how clean the slate got to be able to just add guys like they're able to add this offseason? I'm trying to decide that, right? Because I'm still upset, but I might be kind of like, ugh, they might have nailed this one.
I think there was a lot of drastic overreaction to that trade where people didn't even remotely think logically to the pieces that were coming back to the Reds, especially once you found out that Connor Phillips was the player to be named later, because that completely changed the
Yeah.
entire trade. I do think the Reds also did get a little lucky, though. Like, I think it's a combination of both, where people drastically overreacted to the trade. It was a fine trade at the time. The Reds got a little lucky to really kind of push even farther, with Winker just completely falling off of a cliff. Now, I do think the Reds saw some of that, not obviously going from an all-star to a guy that is even going to get a major league deal this year. I mean, that's like how far he's fallen. But I do think that the Reds said, hey, this guy's not sustainable. He's not a guy we want to sign a contract to. And so I do think they kind of have a little bit of both.
Yeah, and I come back to like how much you're afforded with almost every key player like on the same timeline, how much you're afforded this rare offseason of just like you can plug these holes for short term and not change your long-term vision really at all. And I don't know, man, it's exciting. And I get the general sense that from most Reds fans that they don't have the trust that the Reds are going to spend. And I'm just like, dude, you don't own a sports franchise and not go for this opportunity. Like dollars, it has to make some kind of sense, dollars and cents for a small market team, and always will. But like, there are better ways to make money than just owning, a sports franchise. And a huge part of the thrill when you're a billionaire is to try to win with these things. And just the fact that they've been what they've done so far and what they've been involved in, I'm optimistic that we're going to be pretty happy with this team going into next year.
All right, give me 1 second here. Gonna pull another one of these up.
No, what is it?
No, this one's gonna bring a smile to your face. Candelario is engaged in ongoing discussions with the Reds. Cincinnati has emerged as the leader to sign the free agent infielder. If Candelario,
The last part.
they likely traded infielder before opening day. Who could that be?
What are we doing, man? Does he really need to add that last little part in there, John? What an asshole. Listen, I mean, can we also admit here really quickly that Jonathan India, he probably enjoys the holidays too. Come on, we could leave out the last line there. I mean, we all know what's going on here. And people in the chat are asking about is Jonathan India the white elephant if Candelario comes over? Well, yeah. I mean, why do we always just assume whatever Nick Krall says is accurate when he's already said what he said beforehand? Like, the idea that people are thinking that Jonathan India is off the trading blocks now. And I listened to the podcast yesterday, Nick. Come on, man. We got to be better. Just because Nick Krall comes out and he's like, no, we're going to keep Jonathan India. Like, okay. All right. Nice. That I believe you. I believe you. There's no chance that Jonathan India is on this baseball team if they have it the way in which they want. They want to act like they value him significantly in case the things that they would like to happen don't happen. That's it.
Well, I do appreciate you listening, Trace. That means a lot to me.
The India situation's easy. It is. Again, I agree with Morosi's tweet. Like, if they get Candelario, India becomes expendable, like, pretty darn quickly, right? But I was so pumped when India came back last year in the second half of that in that stretch run. It was like we're one. If India gets traded out with no other depth added, we're one injury away. That will happen. It's going to happen at some point. Somebody's going to have a DL stint from wanting somebody like India to step in. And dude, when you're under contract and you're getting paid, I don't care that much whether or not you're okay with a bench spot and a DH spot and starting maybe 2 games a week in the field. You just do it, right? And that depth is a very good problem to have. I don't think his trade value is worth what he would still be worth to the Reds. And I tend to believe Krall. I'm like, dude, we are not going to ship you out for a bag of balls. You're 3 controllable years with a decent bat. He doesn't really have a home defensively. I was a friend of mine that works in the industry was kind of tipping me off to like the Reds may have been positioning India wrong. Like, if you look at his StatCast, he's real. I might have it backwards, but he's really good moving to one of his other sides, and they're positioning him too far to which side, I forget without looking at it. But on balls hit to his left or right, he's an average defender, but going the other way, he's like -9 runs, whatever it is. But That's just like there's they would be selling low on him at this point, and I still think he can be a valuable piece. And we also don't know like how much of his lack of offensive production last year was due to him being injured and playing injured. Like we just don't know that. Again, that's where I go to the scouts to say he can still hit the baseball, and I would not ship him out for next to nothing. It just has to make sense. Even with Candelario, I'm not like, you don't have to trade India. You do not.
The thing that changed my thinking was that specifically it was mentioned, this was by Mark Sheldon. This is the Reds reporter, who the Reds get what they want out through Mark Shelton. They said for the first time, look at playing first base. They've never even entertained the idea, at least publicly, of playing him anywhere other than second base. So that's why I went to thinking maybe they actually are going to keep him now. That was it was not that they said we're going to keep him. I think that's all fluff. It was that there was a concrete, actual statement of moving positions, and it felt like they had kind of come, at least they felt like they've maybe not exhausted the market, but they've gotten so far down to where, all right, we're probably going to have to keep this guy. And I don't want to say gonna have to keep this guy as a negative thing, because I'm with you, Solly. You don't give this guy in a way. I've said that, but I think they went far enough down this road to where we got to have another plan for India for this year, because I think we're probably going to end up keeping him. That's kind of how I viewed the comments, Trace.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's speculative. We can sit here and debate back and forth on, we believe him or we don't. I don't believe for a single second that they don't have a plan to move him. It's just they're gonna get something for him, because inevitably, like you guys said, he has some value. It's just that the puzzle piece in which he fits into into this organization right now, it's not a very good piece that fits to what we're trying to ultimately do. And I get that there's this depth perspective that if somebody gets hurt, then he can fill a role. But ultimately, if we have it the way in which we would like, I just don't see where it is. I just don't. So we'll see. And I'm not rooting against Jonathan India by any means. I'm certainly not Evan.
I think where I'm at though is Kevin Newman got 253 plate appearances. I know it's going to get you excited there, Trace. Nick Senzel got 330 plate appearances last year. Will Myers had 141. Again, I'm just kind of pulling up some at bats that are not going to be back and getting at bats this coming year. Right? It's a fair amount of at bats to fill, and like it doesn't fit in cleanly, but it's sitting there. Like when you're making the opening day roster, it can look really fat. It really can. But over the course of how often the Reds like to rest guys, and over the course of a 162 game season, I still think there's a ton of value in having a guy like India that can, even if he's starting 40-50% of the time. That may not sound like a lot, but that's a lot of plate appearances, and you can do a lot worse than having his bat in the lineup for those at bats. I love that.
And I also want to say
I'm
all for that. The only thing that I will say is, Solly, for a man that will sit there and watch Tyler Stevenson this year and want to pull out some of that luxurious hair that you have, I have a very strong feeling that if Jonathan India gets stuck out there at first base, there will be some more hair that gets pulled out, because ultimately at the end of the day, they're going to have to throw him balls that go into the dirt, and ultimately he's going to have to catch them. And I don't know if you've watched that a whole lot.
Not
I think
great.
that you probably have, but you might have a few less hairs. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong. I hate rooting against, and not even rooting against our guys. I hate saying bad thing about our own guys, because ultimately I would love for them to succeed. I just don't see it. Well, we'll see.
And I think my view on this all changed so much with the DH, right? I mean, I think the NL needed guys that fit into boxes a lot cleaner before the DH became full-time, right? And now there's just so much versatility with that. And I think Spencer Steer is an American leaguer until the DH came to the NL, and maybe even Jonathan India as well. I don't know if he's a good enough bat to carry a full-time DH spot, but again, he just gets I don't know. I would feel very differently if they could not DH him. I feel the same way about Candelario. I don't know if there'd be enough at bats to justify getting Candelario if there wasn't a DH.
I feel the same way about half the guys on the roster. Steer.
So that's where, like, I still think there might be a big play for the Reds that involves one of Benson or Fraley too, because that's where I keep coming back to. Like, I don't know if having both that's a surplus. That's a spot where, again, I like to have the depth, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of them was included in a deal, and it'd probably be Fraley before it'd be Benson in my book. But they still need to improve somehow on defense. I'm hoping. I don't know if Marte at third, Elliott short, McLean at second is the best combination of those three. I don't know the answer to that. To my eye, it felt like McLean at short and Elliott third was better. Then I think McLean was better at short than he is at second. I mean, that could be a small sample size, but he had some pretty bad errors at second base. And Ellie seemed to pick it better with the shorter timing on balls at third base than he did at shortstop. I have no idea if Marte can play second base. I don't think they've done much of any of that in the minor leagues, and there's got to be a reason why they don't want to do that. But I don't know. I'm still just very worried about the Reds defense. I think they were 28th in defense last year. I forget which metric I used to look that up, but man, those 2010, I think 2012, even better. Those teams could pick it, man. Those teams could play defense. They won a lot of games, and I'm still just worried about the Reds between still needing another starter, having a catcher that can't frame, and a defense that can't pick it. They're going to give up a lot of runs.
I do think they will make up some of that, Sully, because I think they know better how they can use Steer. I think early in the year they didn't really care about Steer's defense because it was very much we're figuring out, can this guy be a big leaguer? But I think he played like the first 14 the first 15 games at third base where he was really, really bad, and then played a lot at first base. I think he's better in the outfield or DH, and you use him at those other spots only break glass scenario. Senzel was also really bad defensively in center field, so that's out of there. Newman and Barrero played a lot earlier in the year. Kind of, I mean, I think that the ceiling is obviously a lot higher with Ellie, McLean, and Marte than those guys. So I do think defense does need to improve, but I do think just they do also have a natural. I think they should get better. Just addition by whatever versus last year.
Yep, I think that's probably right. I haven't looked it up. I always do two stat lookups. You look up the whole season, then you look up from like May 22nd onward when that team kind of became real, and there weren't a lot of changes from that point on. And if I looked up defensive WAR from that point, it would probably look a little bit different, I'm guessing.
They don't let you. I don't know of a site that lets you break it down by months, but I do know as someone who tracked that throughout the year, the Reds were like really bad in April and May, but their number of defensive run saves or outs above average didn't really end up falling all that far. It was kind of stayed, almost like a zero, but they were already so far bad that they were towards the bottom. So I do think they were a lot better from June on, but there's no way to look that up. And I bet someone has the data to that.
I got bad news. From May 22nd through the end of the year, on Fangraphs, the defensive fielding and position adjustment, Reds were 30th out of 30 from May 2nd, May 22nd onward.
They let you do that now. They didn't used to let you split that up by dates. They used to not do dates. So maybe my theory's poop.
It's tough. So,
all right, gentlemen, we have almost made it 2 hours, and we're not going to try to get there, I don't believe. So, listen, we all love the Cincinnati Reds. There's a million different ways you can slice this pie on how they can get better. That's the beautiful part of being a fan. It's the beautiful part about baseball, quite frankly, is there's not too many other sports in the world where you could debate on roster moves at this length for this long, and the Reds obviously have some decisions to make. Ultimately, I think me and Sully are in the mindset that in 24 hours we will get some news about the Cincinnati Reds. Obviously, that's huge speculation. And then Nick Kirby is not, because he's just not in the Christmas spirit quite yet. We'll get him there. We'll work on that. But nonetheless, unless you guys have anything left to add, my camera died a long time ago. People are starting to wonder what's wrong with me. I've got nothing wrong with me. I feel great. I'm looking forward to bigger and better things for the Reds franchise. And as everyone said, and Randy, thank you as a reminder, like the stream if you don't mind. As always, every little bit helps. Trying to grow, trying to make it out here in this world that is digital media. So thank you to Sully. You're a busy man, and you ultimately, at the end of the day, have a big job over there at No Laying Up. and good luck the rest of the season with the golf. There's a lot to situate, a lot to sort through. There's probably a 3-hour show that you could do on just all the different things that are going on. But I
This
guess
is more fun. This is way more fun. I've checked my Reds Twitter account now way more than I check my my golf one, because it's just way more fun when I open it up. So,
Let's go.
nonetheless. Well, you keep enjoying the Reds. We'll keep having you back. Thank you for joining us. Thank you as always, to the folks that support us at Chatterbox Reds. We'll have continued coverage in regards to what happens. We'll try to go live, as always, as soon as something does happen. So if news breaks, we will try to be on the internet as quick as possible. But from the three of us to you, enjoy the rest of the holiday season. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the Cincinnati Reds will make us all proud. I believe in that before 2024 gets here. And if they don't, then I assume 2024 will have some good news. We'll figure it out at some point. Thank you, everybody. Love you. Go Reds.
sign K.